Who do you think you are speaking to my daughter like that? Asterisk, the billionaire's voice cut through the cafe like a blade. But then, the waitress's hands moved. No sound, just a silent language he had never understood. And in that moment, everything he thought he knew about his daughter and himself began to shatter. The cafe was quiet that morning, filled with the scent of fresh bread and coffee. Outside, the city rushed on, unaware of the storm brewing inside dotted a corner. Table sat a man whose face could have been carved from stone. His suit was the kind you didn't buy, you commissioned. Every detail of him whispered power and control. Beside him sat his daughter, small and delicate, her hair in a neat braid. She tapped her fingers lightly against the table, eyes drifting. Between the window and her father's unreadable face, she never spoke. Not here, not anywhere. When the waitress arrived, her smile was warm but cautious. She placed their cups down gently. But instead of turning to the father, she crouched slightly so she could face the little girl directly. And then, without a single word, her hands began to move, graceful, deliberate motion sign language. The girl's head snapped up, eyes wide. Her hands fluttered in response, her silent joy pouring out in rapid gestures. The cafe might as well have disappeared. Around them, the billionaire's jaw tightened. His chair scraped back as he rose slightly, his voice sharp enough to make nearby customers glance over. Who do you think you are speaking to my daughter like that? The waitress straightened, but she didn't flinch. Her hands stilled, resting on the tray. I'm speaking to her in the only language that matters, she said softly. The man's eyes narrowed. For years, he had built walls around his daughter, protecting her from ridicule, from pity, from the casual cruelty of strangers. And now here was a woman tearing through those walls without permission. Years ago, when she was born, the doctors had been clear. She would never speak. He remembered the first time he saw her tiny hands moving in the air, at first random, later with meaning. By then, his wife was gone, unable to bear the weight of a silent future. He had thrown himself into business, deals, power, control. But at night, in the silence of his penthouse, he would watch her hands move, weaving stories he could never understand. He told himself it was enough to give her the best schools, the finest care. But the truth was harder. He had never learned her language. Now, in this cafe, watching her light up under the waitress's gaze, something inside him twisted. He could count on one hand the number of times he'd seen her this animated. The waitress's hands danced again, her eyes never leaving the girl's. She asked about her favorite things, her dreams. The girl answered eagerly, her fingers a blur. The billionaire could only watch, an outsider in his own daughter's world. But then he noticed the waitress's left wrist, faint marks where a hospital band had once been, and on her forearm, a small tattoo, 2 clasped hands, beneath them the words, silent but strong. You've done this before, he said, his voice lower now, less certain. She nodded. My mother lost her hearing after an accident. People stopped talking to her, like she disappeared. I refused to let her live invisible, so I learned. And now, I speak it for anyone who needs it. The billionaire looked at his daughter again. Her smile was shy but full, her eyes brighter than he'd seen in years. The waitress signed one last phrase to the girl. You are never alone. When the check came, he left far more than the bill required. But the true payment was the resolve. Hardening in his chest as they stepped into the street, he paused, turning to the waitress. You've given my daughter something I couldn't, he admitted. A voice that doesn't need sound. Her hands moved slowly, deliberately. Love speaks louder than words. That night, in his high-rise apartment, the billionaire sat beside his daughter at the dining table. The laptop in front of them played a sign language lesson. His fingers stumbled over the first shapes, awkward and slow. But when he formed the sign for father, her eyes filled with tears. It wasn't perfect. But it was a beginning. Sometimes the loudest power is the quietest presence. Respect, connection, and love can break barriers no wall of money or pride ever could. If this story touched you, share it and remember, The language of kindness is universal. Comment where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories that honor the unseen battles and silent heroes.